So, what if the key to understanding one of the world's most complicated conflicts came from a totally unexpected place? Today, we're going to dive into this really fascinating open note from an Iranian author. They offer a perspective that goes back not just a few decades, but thousands of years to get to the real heart of the issue. You know, the author kicks things off with a question that's, well, it's huge. Why does this one conflict seem to just defy time itself, with roots that go back thousands and thousands of years? It's a puzzle that has outlasted entire empires, and our author thinks the answer starts somewhere you might not expect. And right away, this is where things get really different. This isn't some political attack. It's a note addressed to an Earthmate. Just by framing it that way, the author completely shifts the conversation away from blame and toward this idea of a shared existence on one planet. To even try to answer that massive question, the author says we have to go back. I mean, way, way back. Not just 100 years, but to the very beginning, to the common ancestors at the very heart of this story. So according to the author, this whole story, it doesn't start with a battle or a line on a map. It starts with a single person, Abraham. He's pointed to as the common ancestor of the Arabs, the Jews, and even the Edomites. So in this view, every single branch of this incredibly complex history, it all grows from the exact same tree trunk. And look, this family tree is absolutely central to the author's entire point. From Abraham, you get two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael's descendants go on to become Arabs, and Isaac's son Jacob, who you might know as Israel, he's the ancestor of the Jews. The point the author is making is both radical and incredibly simple. These major forces in the Middle East are, essentially, family. Okay, so then the author brings in how religion started to fuel these ancient tensions in the land of Canaan. You've got these deeply sacred and often competing claims to the same small piece of land. For Jews, the Temple of Jerusalem. For Muslims, the site of Muhammad's miraculous night journey. And for Christians, the place of Jesus' life and crucifixion. But then the author adds a twist. A fourth factor they argue is just as important, but totally neutral. This impulse toward totalitarianism on all sides. So if those are the ancient roots, what about the modern era? Well, according to the author, the 20th century didn't solve any of these old tensions. Nope. Instead, it was like pouring gasoline on a fire that had been smoldering for centuries. And get this, the author has this incredible metaphor for it. They say that while the modern era brought things like rationality, peace, and development to a lot of the world, for the Middle East, it continuously nurtured grapes of historical wrath. What a powerful way to say that all these modern actions were only going to yield something bitter down the line. So what actions are we talking about? Well, the author points to this domino effect of 20th century events. It kicks off in 1917 with the Balfour Declaration, which was Britain's promise of a Jewish national home in Palestine. That leads right to the UN's Partition Plan, and of course, the creation of Israel in 1948. And yeah, there were attempts at peace, like the Camp David and Oslo Accords, but the author's point is that every single one of these steps just added another layer of complexity to a conflict that was already thousands of years old. The author really singles out the Balfour Declaration, calling it a historically reckless decision. Now, why that specific phrase? Because in their view, it was a decision made by a faraway power, Britain, without any real say from the people whose lives and land would be changed forever. For this author, that was kind of the original sin of the modern conflict. And all of this leads to a complete transformation of the conflict itself. As you can see, the author argues that for centuries, the major regional beefs were between Christians and Muslims. But after all those 20th century events, the whole dynamic gets recentered into the Jewish-Muslim conflict that has really defined the modern era. It fundamentally changed the game. Okay, so after walking us through this really long and complicated history, the author basically asks, so what now? How do we find a way forward? And their answer isn't another treaty or another border, it's a whole new way of thinking. This is where we shift from history to philosophy. And you've really got to get this part to understand their whole point. That entire historical deep dive we just did, that wasn't just for kicks. It was exhibit A in their case for why our old ways of thinking are totally failing us and why we desperately need something new. And here it is. The author calls it the Earthmate philosophy. And it's a simple but really profound idea. It says that the interests of the entire planet, things like sustainable preservation and peaceful coexistence, have to come before the interests of any one nation, religion, or group. It's about seeing each other not as enemies, but as fellow inhabitants of Earth. This sentence right here, this is the heart of it all. It makes it crystal clear why the author's analysis isn't trying to be pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. The only side they're on is the side of the Earth and every single person who lives on it. So at the end of the day, what's the point of all this? Why does seeing the world this way even matter? Well, the author argues that adopting this terrestrial perspective isn't just some nice, fuzzy idea. It actually has the power to completely reframe problems that seem completely impossible to solve. And that's really the final plea here. It's a call to just step back from the impossible question of who is right, and instead ask a totally different question: what is our common interest? From this perspective, the answer is simple: a peaceful, sustainable home for all of us. And that brings us to the author's final, provocative question, which I'm just going to leave with you to think about. What if we re-examined history not as a story of us versus them, but as a story of fellow Earthmates? Could that one shift in perspective actually change anything? It's a really powerful thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this one.